Well, hi everyone. Welcome. I'm in weekend mode. It is a national holiday tomorrow, so I hope you're all well. First few minutes, everyone's going to come in and do introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are. It'd be great to hear what you're all up to, how things are going. Today we are talking about creating a workshop culture, and we'll be doing that within Mural. Mural is a fantastic online collaboration tool, and we will start using that. If you're brand new to Mural, you'll get a deep dive on what that looks like. So all good. So do introduce yourself in the chat. Alison's here. Say hi, Alison.
Hi.
Good stuff. Anyone in the chat, do comment if you're just here for Alison. That's fine. No, we can work around that. Good stuff. Alison, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really good. Sun's shining, can't complain.
Good stuff.
And you?
Yeah. Like I said, it's national holiday tomorrow. And I know the audience here are across the globe, so no doubt some are envious. But I think Germany had a day off last Friday.
Yeah.
So I think things are fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, good. Right, let's do a little roll call. So we got Astrid, we have Philippa, we've got Rene, we've got Romain, we've got Victor, we've got Victoria, we've got Malgorzata, and we've got Gisela. Hey Gisela, I worked with Gisela last week. Awesome. Good stuff. And Romain lives in France and works as a UX designer. Awesome. Well, let's explain what this is all about. I'm going to share a link to Mural that will help us guide today's content. And I am going to put that in the chat now. And I am then going to screen share so that you can follow along. So ready, steady. There's the board. I'm going to share my screen and off we go. You do not need to see my Outlook. Right, so here's the board today. We have a tight schedule in today. So we've got an icebreaker. We're going to talk about the remote sprint chapter, what that's all about. And then we're going to hit into what workshop culture is all about. Enable you as a group in an activity so that is highly collaborative, pushing you away from presentation culture into a collaboration culture, and just my little agenda item there. And then we've got some places to go a bit deeper into further reading, and then any questions. If you have any questions today, please use the Q&A in Zoom, and we will answer them at a pause, and if we've got more time at the end, we can answer them there. Top left, Alison and I have some LinkedIn profiles. You can double click and find out more about us. And I think to start with, as people are coming in, we'll hit our icebreaker. So if you're new to Mural, Mural works very much like Google Maps does. So if you've got a keyboard, you can zoom in and zoom out. That works. You can use your mouse to kind of move around. You've also got this bottom right-hand corner where you can navigate. There's a hand that helps you move around. And yeah, hopefully that will start the process of helping you understand how to start using a new tool. So to start with, I'm going to bang on some time. And I want to ask you this question. What that question is Think back to a great workshop you've been in and list the feelings that you had at the end and after. What did you achieve? What made it great? So to contribute, just double click and you can start making these sticky notes. You can click in them and start typing. So think back to a great workshop you've been in, list the feelings that you had at the end and after. What did you achieve and what made it great? So just a few minutes filling that in. I'm going to reshare the link in the chat. For anyone who really knows what Zoom does, it does not share history for people that drop in. Cool. So I'll add a few minutes on that. Got some good contributions here. If anyone wants to explain a bit more around what they've written, let us know in the chat, and it can turn into a bit of a radio phone-in show, which is always exciting. Alison, you've got a long weekend. Any COVID-19 compatible plans?
Well, I mean, the thing is that this bank holiday has really messed me up, because we usually have a bank holiday on a Monday, right? Well, this bank holiday usually falls on a Monday. Yeah. And at the weekend, I was speaking to my family, and they were talking about a bank holiday on the Friday. So I actually thought it was last Friday, and I missed it. and so then this week, I found out that it's actually this Friday. So, I mean, I don't know what to do, to be honest. I'm just going to do what I usually do and hang around, because I'm really confused with all these bank holidays.
Yeah. No, same. I told a team yesterday, hey, national holiday in the UK on Friday and on Monday, and I didn't realize that actually we don't have that Monday off, which is fine. I like work, but you're right, it is rare that we just have a Friday as a national holiday.
It's messed everything up. There's some really great responses coming in there. Really, what have we got there? Excitement, enlightened, satisfied with the feeling, being on the same page, getting things done as a team. Clarity after key points are being explained, in the flow, love that, more time to collaborate and ideate together, comfortable with the climate generated within the team, even when not all the participants know each other. And I think, as Ross said, you know, if you want to say anything about what you've put down, then I think you can raise your hand, right, Ross?
You can raise your hand, you can type yes, definitely. Yeah, anything to add a bit more human to it. These are quite positive feelings so far. Yeah.
Well, we did say a great workshop.
Yeah. It's good we're in that frame.
Validation. Yeah. And does anybody want to add? I mean, there's a few minutes left.
Alison, as a seasoned facilitator, do you find you feel differently to the participants at the end and after a workshop?
Well, I think the thing is that I mean, there's two ways it can go, isn't there? There's either you can you feel really satisfied with the workshop. At the same time, it's really not up to what you feel as a facilitator, it's what people feel. So you can also, as a facilitator, feel that it went terribly, but the participants are so glad with what they got done. So it's I mean, it's hard to say, really. I guess if you feel that you kind of got there and you got the outcomes, and that's one thing, but you still always need to get feedback. And shared understanding, shared language, excitement and energy to follow up. I like that.
Yeah, I think certainly as a facilitator, the usual path of and direction of travel for me is a little bit of exhaustion, because I've put in my all. It's not just running the workshop, it's also reading the body language, responding to comments, and you know, being on top of it. But you're right, feedback is oxygen. Like we're always trying to learn more out of the experiences that we curate. And yeah, it's always good to hear whether we're near the mark or not.
Definitely.
Good. Time is up. Anyone want to share what they've written or go into a bit more detail? Now is the time to say. If you don't want to, we can just read off what we've got, but some really interesting contributions here.
Yeah, and I'd like to say a little bit about this actually. I mean, obviously I'm going to talk about this in more detail, but for me, the reason I talk about workshop culture is I think that look at all this stuff that workshops can achieve, and it's great and it's really positive. I mean, you know, you can have workshops that don't go so well, but when they do go well, this is the stuff that really makes them amazing. And I always just feel it's such a shame to leave that feeling at the end of the workshop. Like, why can't we bring more of this stuff into the way that we work generally? Why does it have to be left to that kind of special one-off event? So I'm going to talk a bit more about that a bit later.
Incredible. Excellent. So yeah, in lieu of anyone wanting to go a bit deeper, I like this one. Sensation to have managed to imagine a solution that no one alone could have imagined. That's the power of teamwork. I mean, that's challenging each other. I actually think competition's a really good word. It kind of heightens some inputs from the team and makes them think a bit more clearly.
It's that collaborative feeling. It's just that feeling of you know, we've got so much done. Almost sometimes like a, you know, without kind of going a bit sort of fancy, like it's almost a bit magic, really.
Yeah.
And I always kind of sort of say, you know, if I could bottle up this feeling and just kind of spread it throughout a culture, then our days, you know, I mean, we can't work in a workshop all the time, but I'm certain, and you know, I've seen that it's possible to take elements of that and infuse it throughout our culture, so that you can have more of that on a daily basis.
Totally. And I don't know your motivations, but I've been in the world of work for over 15 years. To the early part, I was in a lot of bad meetings. And that's probably where my proliferation of making sure that each engagement is as fantastic as possible is prime.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for contributing. That's really, really positive. I hope you're getting a handle of Mural if you're new to it. One day we'll get Mural to sponsor this maybe. Yeah, really good to kind of get people motivated and engaged. So I'll talk about the chapter, but first I wanted to talk a bit about Alison and myself. Alison has a fantastic, just every conversation that I've had with Alison so far has been utterly positive. I feel like I've walked away with something more than she's probably walked away with. But we were keen to do something together, and a webinar seemed like a good way to get started. And so here we are. Alison, could you tell everyone just a bit about yourself if they don't know you, and what you're working on at the moment, what drives you?
Yeah, so my company is called Bracket. It's a consultancy. I'm based in London, and the core of what I do is around helping teams work better together and focusing on team culture and collaboration and team creativity, productivity, all the elements that you need to be in place for not only for people to enjoy their work, but to thrive and to do the best work of their lives together as well. A lot of the work that I do is workshop facilitation, but it's not all that I do, but a lot of the influences and the principles that I use when I'm helping teams to develop their cultures comes from what I've learned through facilitating workshops, and particularly facilitating creative teams, and sort of, you know, knowing what comes from that. So workshop facilitation, training, coaching, team coaching, consultancy, do speaking. I've written a book called A Pocket Guide to Effective Workshops that was released in 2015. And I am theoretically working on my next book, which is about workshop culture, because of the work that I've seen through facilitating workshops and the impact that it can have on teams. So I will talk about that a bit later, but you can find out more about me either via LinkedIn or on my website, which is bracketcreative.co.uk.
Awesome. Thank you, Alison. So yeah, you can double click on that to find on, God, it's funny, you know, there's corporate culture where you talk about double clicking and then there's actually double clicking. Good, okay, awesome. So
I just want to say hi to Chris as well. Hey,
yeah,
Chris.
I saw Chris is in the chat.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Awesome. So let's, Chris and I were talking about COVID hair the other day, actually earlier this morning. I have yet to shave it all off, and I don't think I will, actually.
Actually, there's a few names I recognise. There's Chris, I recognise Philippa, hi Philippa, Renee, we're connected as well, Susan, we're connected, Victoria, we're connected. There's a few people that I know in there.
Awesome. Well, hopefully they enjoy what we've got to cover today. So I'm going to talk for less than 10 minutes, because I'm quite well prepared in this area, about what remote sprint chapters are all about, which may give you some context over what this webinar can help with. So last year, Alison and I actually were at the Google Sprint Conference. Happens once a year. Doubt it's going to happen this year, but who knows. And over in the US, Colorado is a fantastic place, isn't it, Alison?
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, yeah.
The air is thin, but it is a beautiful country and countryside rather. And yeah, we got to make some new friends, but also out of the back of that, Google recognized that one event a year isn't really going to cut it to help people engage with design sprints, but also support a community across the globe. So they reached out to meetups that were happening. I was running one, other people around the world were running some, and they formed this idea of a global chapter. And so the focus for the remote sprint chapter is taking the design sprint and doing it virtually or remotely. And that has garnered some interest over the last few weeks, where we're not able to meet in a room and solve problems. And so we've run as many webinars as possible to help share the knowledge, answer any questions. But also I know some here will be new to the idea of the design sprint. It's essentially a way of working where you can solve big problems as a team within a couple of days, or as many days as you need to. Really, this is about sharing awareness, any resources, and helping people connect. So please do ask as many questions, hit Alison and I up afterwards. And yeah, we are just here to help the community. So with that, that was probably the fastest I've ever done it. I really want to get into today's content, answer any questions that you have, and get to the activity. So I'm going to hand over to Alison, and she is going to talk about creating a workshop culture. Alison.
Brilliant, thanks Ross. So I think I don't want to go way back into my history, but I think it's worth saying that I didn't become a workshop facilitator because I wanted to facilitate workshops. I fell into workshop facilitation because I had a real passion for collaboration. And in the early days of Bracket, one of the things that I was doing was I was bringing teams of creatives together that I'd never met before and were about to work on a project together. And because they hadn't met, it made sense that I'd get everybody together in a room. And at the time, I didn't realise that what I was doing was I was facilitating a workshop. And I just saw that, you know, not only did this workshop help us to get stuff done, the thing that we needed to get done, i.e. figure out how we were going to work together and what we were going to do for a client on that project, but it also really set up the environment for the team to work collaboratively throughout the project. It just changed the way that we all interacted with each other. Anyway, as bracket, and I mean, I found it a very powerful method for, let's say, not only getting things done, but also kind of forming those team connections and those team bonds. Anyway, I sort of started doing more and more of those workshops and facilitating workshops for clients, because I realised how powerful it was. And there was something else that I started to notice. One, when I did a one-off workshop, like how much we could get done in such a short space of time when a workshop was facilitated well. But also when I was able to work with a client over a period of time and run more workshops, more than just a one-off workshop, it was actually changing the way that they were interacting with each other as well. So it was kind of starting to have an impact on the culture. So it wasn't just what we were getting done in the workshop, it was like it was almost exposing people to a different way of working. They were getting a taste of what collaboration really looked like. And because they were getting a taste of what collaboration looked like in the workshop, it meant that outside of the workshop, they're able to be more collaborative as well. So I started to kind of put the name around this of a workshop culture. It's almost like the link between running a great workshop and the impact that it has on a team when that happens. And through the work that I was doing with my clients, I kind of realized that, you know, in a sort of a perfect way, if we were to look at stages of a workshop culture, it would almost be in these 3 stages that we've got up here. So the first stage that, you know, is absolutely essential if you want to start thinking about this workshop culture, which is like more collaboration, more engagement, more interactivity, more, you know, the idea of kind of people being able to speak up. I sort of didn't say that at the beginning, but what the impact that this has on teams, if you kind of think about meetings where people don't get to speak up, they're not engaged, and all of a sudden they switch to formats where they're hearing their ideas actually being taken on, the impact that that has on them in the culture is quite profound. So if you want to have more of that in your culture, then the first thing that you need to do is run a really great workshop, because you need to kind of get the buy-in that actually this format works. And, you know, there's loads of tips out there on how to run effective workshops, but it's not just about, you know, what happens in the workshop, it's how you design the workshop, how you engage that follow-up afterwards to make sure that people can see the impact of what they did on the day actually coming to fruition. So those ideas actually being turned into something. So the first stage is like just to get really good at running brilliant workshops which have an impact, which get people speaking, get people generating great ideas, and they can see how it how those ideas are actually developed at a later basis. But then what happens is that when you've kind of convinced people of the format, that the format works, people might start running more, you might get permission to run more workshops, or even run some of your meetings as workshops. This is also one of my favourite parts of workshop culture, which is the idea that you don't have to run meetings as meetings. Some of your meetings can be more workshop-like, so you can bring in little exercises that you might run in a workshop, such as an affinity mapping, or you know, note and vote, dot voting, or any other kind of, you know, silent brainstorming. Those kinds of exercises don't have to. A workshop doesn't have to be, you know, 3 hours long. It can be 10 minutes within an existing meeting. So when you start getting permission or buy-in for running your meetings, or even running workshops in a different way, because people can see their effectiveness, then you're going to be able to run more of these workshops. And what happens over time is that that behaviour starts to become a bit normalised. You know, it's not that you're running a workshop or you're running a meeting, you're just meeting, and, you know, they're collaborative by nature. So that's when sort of you get to the third stage, which is where I'd say sort of workshops are seen as this normal thing. They're not seen as this kind of separate event where you have to, you know, book a room out and go off site and get the stickies out and the whiteboards. And that's, you know, that is great to do that every now and again. You do need that. But actually it becomes much more of a natural part of the culture, where it doesn't, you don't need to kind of create this big thing to get everyone working collaboratively. Referring back to the sprints, if you've read the sprint book, you know, the sprint book is really focused on the process, that kind of 5-day process. You flick through to the end. One of the things that Jake Knapp says about the sprint is that, you know, you're going to get the outcomes, the very tangible outcomes from a sprint. But one of the things that you notice is that you also start to see that people might start to work a little bit differently. You know, he says after your first sprint, you might notice a shift in the way that your team works. You'll build confidence in one another's expertise and in your collective ability to make progress towards ambitious goals. And that's all because in the workshop, which Sprint is a workshop essentially, in the workshop, you've given people a taste of what that feels like. As a facilitator, you've been able to demonstrate what it's like when people get together collaboratively and have really productive discussions and generate ideas in a really productive way. So that's kind of essentially what a workshop culture is. And in a second, we're going to talk a little bit about the skills that you use as a facilitator that can be applied to the rest of a culture. As I say, as a facilitator, we learn a lot about what it looks like to lead teams in kind of chaotic environments, really, because a workshop can be quite chaotic, particularly in the creative stage. And as facilitators, we've started to get quite used to that, and we've developed skills which enable us to, for want of a better word, cope and act in those kinds of situations, which are really useful for kind of the times that we're in right now. Some of the lesser considered skills of a facilitator that I sort of want to point out before we go into these sort of workshop facilitation skills are some of the skills that you might find from all the way from beginning of designing a workshop all the way through to the end of the follow-up, because I see a facilitator skill, a facilitator's role as being involved throughout all those stages: designing the workshop, the work facilitating on the day, and then also what happens afterwards in the follow-up to make sure that those the outcomes are either integrated or taken forward. One of those skills is strategic thinking, because when you're designing a workshop, you have to think about the bigger picture. You have to think, what is it, why are we running this workshop? Where does this fit in to the work that we're doing, and what do we want to achieve? And then there's a design element, because you're kind of thinking about that outcome that you want to achieve, and you're creating the workshop outline from that point. So you're working backwards and thinking, right, okay, we want to get to there. What are the things that we need to do to get there? And you're designing that process. So that's another skill that you have as a facilitator. And both of those skills, when you're thinking about, leading teams through uncertainty, thinking about purpose, thinking about, the direction that you're going in, those are all skills that you can have in sort of leading those kinds of conversations. In the workshop, there's this skill around, helping teams to almost like cut through all the fuzz and helping them to kind of extract their ideas and see when the point is between kind of ideas generation into, okay, we need to make something happen now. And then the final skill, and these are just 4 skills that I've kind of identified throughout the whole process. The final skill is around behaviour change, because often what you find when you're running workshops, people are generating new ideas. It's not just the idea itself, but often people have to work in a new way to actually implement that idea, because they haven't, it's a new idea, they haven't done it before, it's something completely new, so they might have to develop new processes, a new way of working, a new mindset in order to make that idea happen. And again, as a facilitator, you've got a role in facilitating that mindset change and making sure that those ideas come to fruition. So I kind of raced through that because I was keeping an eye on the clock, but I hope it was all clear. So on that, I think, I've identified some of the skills which are in the broader sense of workshop facilitation and workshop design, but it'd be good to move to the next section and start getting your ideas of some of the skills that you use as facilitators in workshops, either within the workshop on the day itself or around the workshop, that you think might be useful in applying to team culture, and particularly applying to team culture in times like these when things are very, very uncertain.
Great, thank you, Alison. Bang on. I wanted to, as we move over to traverse to the activities, I wanted to pick up on Renee's point in the chat about when we talk about workshop culture, do we mean methods by inserting workshop elements into the work that's being done and what working culture looks like? Or what do you see as further elements to take from a workshop?
Both.
Yeah.
So I think that, part of a workshop culture is definitely on a very tangible level, using workshop techniques in meetings and in the way that you kind of lead conversations. But then there's also a lot of intangible elements, like what is it that you do as a facilitator to encourage everyone to speak up? what is it that you do as a facilitator to create an environment where people feel that they can be creative? And those are the, we kind of do those instinctively. We start to do them instinctively as facilitators, but they're very, very useful in starting to kind of create that culture outside of workshops as well.
Great.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we covered that. Please do ask any further questions that you have, and we can get started with the activity. So Alison just talked about a few skills that she finds useful in the workshops that she engages in. This activity is about putting together ideas, and then we're going to start collecting them around themes to get some kind of key insights out of what we think are useful skills that are useful to lead, certainly in these times. So, what skills of facilitation do you think are useful, and how might you use them? I'm going to set some time on, and just like the icebreaker, start double clicking. Here's an example of listening. You can start adding your ideas into what skills and facilitation you think are useful to lead in these times, and how might you use them. So add in some contributions there. I'm trying to rack my brains. I think sometimes I forget the basics, Alison, because I've been doing it so long, things just come naturally, and I have to remind myself why I say, hey, just write 3 words, or just select 6 post-its. It's because I've remembered that if I don't give the team constraints, that the workshop time just elongates, and yeah, I have to remind myself of some of the things that I take for granted sometimes.
I think that's absolutely it. I think the thing is, as facilitators, we do this stuff naturally, and this is what's a massive part of the workshop culture for me, is helping facilitators to really know the skills that they have that are useful elsewhere. Facilitation isn't just for workshops, and we pick up so much just by having to kind of manage a group of people, facilitate a group of people, guiding them through a process, trying to kind of pull out some of the themes and ideas that come out, synthesize them, all those kinds of things that are so useful outside of workshops. It's almost kind of like a bit of an empowerment thing, remembering how much you do, because we just do it instinctively, because we've got an outcome to get to, but there is so much that we do as facilitators that is amazingly useful.
Yeah, I'm seeing some really good contributions there. I personally find empathy quite difficult, because if I take empathy as the definition of I don't know you and I don't know your life, but I can start trying and be open to it, but it's, yeah, I kind of understand as much as I can, but for kind of deeper empathy, that's often a challenge for me.
I think, as a facilitator, you recognize that, and then it's, well, how do I develop that, or how do I kind of, make space for that for myself when I'm running a workshop? Yeah. There you go, self-awareness is another one.
Yeah.
100% self-aware as a facilitator, right?
Awesome. So just over 2 minutes. I like the creating a safe environment. It's another thing I take for granted. I am often so transparent and always running to the problem and talking about the elephant in the room. I sometimes forget that the culture within that particular business hasn't got there yet, or finds it difficult to talk about the most obvious problems because of the culture that they have. But creating that safe environment, you might start unpicking that and aligning more to what you mentioned Jake Knapp saying earlier. It's about this workshop can actually be a vehicle to better teamwork.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a flip side of that, which is, I think 100% important to create that safe environment so that people can speak up. I also think that sort of understanding what you were talking about in that balance of, you know, where is my role to challenge? When is it my role to challenge? I was kind of thinking this morning, because I was thinking about my coach, and I was thinking that, you know, your coach should really get on your nerves sometimes. Like they should hit a nerve at some point, because if they're not, then they're just agreeing with you and making you feel good. But actually, if you want to stretch yourself, then you kind of need someone to point to the places that you're avoiding. And sometimes a facilitator needs to do that with a team as well. You know, you need to kind of point out the elephant in the room, because maybe that's a map that will often, it is a big barrier to the team moving forward.
Totally. Some of the early feedback I got over a year ago now, they would say, "Oh, I didn't think we'd be talking at such a high level." I'm like, well, I'm trying to enable you to think about breaking outside of your silo and attributing the work that you're doing to the actual business goals and actually helping your customers or users. And they're like, "Oh, I didn't really think of it like that." I'm like, right, let's do a mapping exercise of what you do and then what this person does. And they started to understand how the business actually works. And yeah, I love mapping. Yeah. Great. Time done. I think we can cover a few of these as we move them over to themes. So we can kind of read each other out as we plot them across. Alison, do you want to start, and I'll take it as a relay and do the next few. So do you want to start with a few and pull them over?
Yeah. Oh, am I? Sorry, I'm not in the mural board. Hold on. Wait. And if anybody wants to talk about what you've added as well, then yeah, absolutely kind of happy for you to do that. Okay, so where shall I start? I'm going to start with listening, deep listening. I like that one. I've got like 4 key skills of facilitators, and listening is kind of one of them. And we know like the power that actually really listening to people can have. I've been doing some team coaching sessions as part of, you know, everything that's been going on, and sometimes for some of the teams that I've been working with, all they needed was a space to just talk and be listened to. So that can be really powerful. What else? Getting people to open up. So I'm going to perhaps group that with creating a safe environment as well.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Empathy. Absolutely. Sort of aligned with deep listening. We've got, I saw playfulness somewhere, and I know we've got bringing the sense of humour and laughter. Oh, there it is, playfulness as well. Else, please feel free to, if you've got any comments or thoughts, anybody, please feel free to add in.
Yeah, or if anyone wants to explain any part of what they've written. What else
time management, realistic sense of time and focus. I think there was another one around that as well.
I think, yeah. People remember me for my time management. I'm actually trying to shift gears and try and get them to think of something else when they think of me.
Right. Yeah, and I guess some things, you know, similar, we can group that with around focus as well. So this kind of idea of, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to pick some out, Ross?
Yeah, and I'll hand the theming to you. Confidence. Part of what I like about using a framework like the sprint is you can be absolutely confident about what you're doing, what happens next, and there's no ambiguity about it. This week I actually ran a workshop which wasn't a sprint, which I had to be a bit more flexible. And to be honest, I did find that to be a little bit of a challenge because I had no reps in it. It was completely unique. But I think the team looked to confidence, and that's something a facilitator should try and exude. creating opportunities to work together. So yeah, there's some kind of collaboration type things.
And connecting people, that kind of comes.
Yeah.
That.
Bring that over. So that's collaboration. I am so in this mode of getting out of a presentation culture and moving into a collaboration culture. Like there's a book title there somewhere, but probably someone's written it already. What else have we got? Generosity. It's not about you. Totally.
Love that.
I'm going to put that near listening. One of the things I was taught really early on was, as a facilitator, try not to contribute. Your role is not to be another one of everyone else. It's to be a little more unique and help get the most out of that team by providing structure and challenge them. So yeah, I like that.
I've been adding some more. So I've kind of added keeping the momentum and the energy around time management, and I've added serve and being present to the area around listening as well. So I'm
going to add one about accountability, because about turning ideas into actions. Any session that you have where there are no next steps, that doesn't help anyone. I think
I would really love to hear from some people that are on the call about how they feel that these skills could be applied well to current times. So please feel free to, it'd be lovely to hear another voice. So please feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm going to call some people out that I know would be vocal. Matt, I'm sure you have something to say about this, and Saba, I am definitely sure you have things to say about this. So yeah, do put up your hand. What else have we got? Personal skills, reading body language. Yeah, a little more difficult remotely, but you can, there are ways to get there. I mean, the top one for me is if you're doing an activity about talking and you see someone's hands like this, they're probably writing an email.
Or writing in the chat box.
yeah. Or they're just about to put a bid in on the eBay item they want. So yeah. Flexibility. I
was gonna say, I'm just looking at all of these and just see, you know, they're 100% things that I don't necessarily need to, you know, they're not confined to a workshop space, and you can see how much of an impact these can have in a culture generally. You know, a team needs to be focused, a team needs to be on track, you need to have playfulness within your team, you want to create a safe environment for people to speak up. You know, you want to create those opportunities to work together. So as facilitators, we've got so many qualities that can contribute to that. And so, you know, I always say sort of, you know, facilitation is a skill that everybody should have, because it's just so valuable in kind of, you know, the way that we work together.
Cool. Okay. Last three, and then we can go on to further reading and answer any questions. So the ability to sum up and to circle back has been said to keep everyone on the same page.
Synthesis, yeah, I love that. It's another one of my 4 key skills.
Yeah.
You need to, that's why a facilitator is, you know, separate from the discussion, because you need someone that's able to kind of see what's going on around the team and above the team and underneath the team. And when you're in it, it's so difficult. And again, when you think about the situation that we're in, you know, there was a moment where it was all very, you know, there was a lot of panic, and there were a lot of people that couldn't see the wood for the trees because we were just right in it. We were just kind of in this mess. And you can see the ability for someone, just one person in that team, to be able to kind of step back and kind of see what's going on, see the bigger picture, and kind of reflect that back to the team can be so useful.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we're over. Good stuff. Well done, everyone. Really, really useful contributions. I wanted to finish on the playfulness bit. quite often I will start with an icebreaker. Yes, I'm that guy. Jake Knapp does not like icebreakers, but I do. And it does a couple of things for me. Certainly at these times, it helps people start using the tooling that we're using. But it does a few things for me. It enables people to kind of think a little more creatively to start with. If they are super focused on the topic or the problem we're solving, then I tailor the icebreaker to that, a little like we did today. And just like the one we did today, that is as fine an icebreaker as possible. You can do a very complex one. You can do something that, you know, involves Lego or, you know, virtual clip art or whatever. But just a way to kick off in the right tone. I personally find icebreakers to be a good way to do that. Sometimes they're called energizers if you're using them to kind of energize the team later on. Alison, do you like icebreakers? Do you use them?
Icebreakers with a purpose. So they, for me, I like them when they're related to the workshop or the content of the workshop. And as you were speaking, actually, I was kind of, you know, thinking, well, what's the equivalent outside of a workshop of an icebreaker?
Yeah.
So interesting to think about that. Like, what do you need? And you know, it may be like a check-in at the beginning of a meeting. You know, like the kind of check-in, check-out type thing. Or it could be, I don't know, something that, you know, an activity, some kind of ritual that people do at the beginning of the day. Especially when we're remotely, they don't need to be together, but it could be some way of kind of checking in and saying, I'm here, either like a message on Slack or sending a funny GIF or something like that. So what could an icebreaker be outside of a workshop?
Yeah, absolutely. And one failed engagement technique I used was at the end of a workshop in person, where we would run them in London. I'd say, well, the thing that Google does right now is they have happy hour. So I started trying to engage people in happy hour, but they would look at their watches and go, actually, the sooner I get home, the sooner the better. And I want to fix that. I don't know how, but I just want to keep the party going. But hey.
Well, this is for me is like the design element of, you know, being a facilitator and designing the process. Like you often think, well, what's the outcome that you want to achieve? Actually, sometimes that design might need to be done in collaboration with the team. So you use your facilitation skills there. So it's like, right, I want to create a way that we can stay connected and we can stay having fun. What could that look like for us as a team? And sort of get them to contribute and facilitate that discussion.
Yeah, and you know, you're in agency consultant land, so am I. You start building relationships, or at least connections, and you know that's the best way to. They might even loosen up and say, hey, you know that thing, I think you treated us a little too harshly, or whatever. Like it's a great feedback loop. But also find out more about them. I'm so naturally inquisitive. Some people would say nosy, but I just want to get to know people. I'm just interested in what motivates them, what they're up to. But hey, that's me. Great. Further reading. Alison suggested a few ways to dive a bit deeper. Could you tell us about these references here, Alison?
Yeah, so for me, there's a blog post which is what I've written about workshop culture, and some of the skills that we have as facilitators, particularly the ones I mentioned at the beginning around kind of strategy and strategic thinking and design, and that's all kind of outlined there. As I said, sort of the facilitation thing has come really from the way that I have understood the best way to facilitate creative teams. And one of the people that has really massively influenced me with that is a scholar called Teresa Amabile. And she wrote a book called The Progress Principle with her husband, Stephen Kramer. And they were talking all about what creative teams need to feel, or people in the knowledge sector need to feel engaged, well, it says their joy, engagement and creativity at work. She identified that progress was one of those massive factors. And, you know, putting two and two together as a facilitator, that's one of the things that you're doing. You're helping a team to progress. through some stages or through a series of activities to get to an outcome. So it kind of thinks, right, okay, as managers, we kind of need we need facilitation skills, because that's what's important to people making progress, not necessarily us making decisions, but being able to facilitate that progress. Another book that has massively influenced me is this Collective Genius by Linda Hill and her co-authors, and she talks a lot about the conditions that you need for innovation. And I love one of the things that she said, which is around, you know, a leader's role is to set the stage and set the environment for collaboration and creativity to happen. And again, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're doing as facilitators. We are there to kind of create an environment for people to, you know, do their best work. And then the final one is like a research study, if you're kind of into some of the academia side of it, which is just two academics did some research into what was the difference between top management teams that were more creative and were able to generate ideas and those that weren't. And it turned out that the CEO had a particular skill, which was, again, facilitation. So it really makes a difference of, you know, if you have these skills and you can create the space for those kinds of discussions, and you are able to kind of manage that creativity or facilitate that creativity, then it can really make a difference in the way that a team performs together.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that. I've posted those links in the chat just in case anyone's viewing. So now we're on to any questions. So if you do have any questions, put them in the Q&A or write them on a post-it here. I had a question, Alison. What on earth was it? Facilitation to me is pretty close to leadership. Are we doing pretty similar things? Do you think there's a fair distinction, or it just goes by another name?
Well, I think that facilitation should be leadership, but I think the thing is that not everybody sees it that way. I think you would see some people that are out there that call themselves leaders, but they don't facilitate. So, you know, as I said, I think that facilitation is a really key skill that everybody should have. So I think essentially that it should be it, but I don't know whether that's actually happening in real life. I don't know if people know what if everybody knows really what facilitation looks like, what it is. So that's why it's up to us as facilitators who are already doing this stuff to really demonstrate it so that they can feel it. And they can think, okay, I want to do that. I want to do more of that with my team.
Yeah, when I started getting into this world a few years ago, I was questioning, does each of us become a facilitator, or do we somehow create a role of a full-time facilitator? And I haven't quite yet seen the mix of that. I guess I'm characterized as a full-time facilitator, as are you, but for internal incumbent teams, have you just found it to, when you're starting working with them, do they start engaging and changing and then starting to facilitate their own workshops, or do they get the value of an outside facilitator to help kind of rustle them up and start getting them to better outcomes?
Yeah, both. So I think it's important for me to point out that here I'm not kind of saying that we shouldn't run workshops and it should all be integrated into the culture so that it's natural. There are times and places when it's a good time to kind of do that big, let's all go off site and like have a special day and really focus on this work. And I think for those situations it's a really good idea to bring in an external facilitator, because again the team needs to get involved. You can't be in the session and facilitating at the same time. You've got to be one of the two. Yeah. And that's a good time when it's good to bring in an internal facilitator. At the same time, there's going to be some people that are naturally want to facilitate. They're going to see people facilitate and they're going to be in a workshop and they're going to be like, I want to do more of this. They kind of naturally gravitate towards it. And then you've got the next level where they're, people might not call themselves facilitators, but they see the benefit of it. And, they might not kind of say, right, I'm a facilitator, but they can definitely kind of say, right, I've got this challenge, this question. How might we, encourage better feedback from that team? And they, they can just run a quick kind of post-it note, brain dump type activity in their workshop, but they don't need to facilitate a whole workshop. And I'm going to stop speaking because I know there's some questions there.
No, it's it's good.
I want to get to.
I wanted to get one question in, but yeah, let's hit some of these. So let's go with this one. Do you have recommendations for building trust and inviting people when they don't work in your organization?
As a facilitator, well, I mean, sometimes people, I had a conversation this morning actually where someone was saying, I'm trying to get this stuff going in my organization, but I'm not making any headway. I need someone from outside to come in and talk to my team. So sometimes actually having an external person can be a benefit because they're not entrenched in all of the politics. There's no history there and there's no kind of knowledge of the conflict. So I think with any facilitator, if you're bringing them in, they would, spend time talking to you and figuring out what challenges it is that you want to get addressed and designing the workshop around that. And, sometimes when I'm facilitating workshops as well, if it's necessary, then I'll speak to more than one person on the team to make sure I get that view. And in that kind of one-to-one interview, that's when you can start building up the trust as well with each person on the team.
Great answer. Let's hit the yellow one. Do you think it's easier to bring a workshop culture from outside an organization, or could it be done from within as well? So the push and pull of internal, let's innovate ourselves. Do they need that outside influence to help them get to that point?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the last question in that sometimes it helps to bring someone from the outside as like an instigator. If someone's doing it from inside, I work with people as well who are trying to do this stuff within their organizations, and I often advise them to do it in small pieces rather than kind of saying, right, that's it, we want a workshop culture, this is it, this is a thing now. Actually starting with that thing that I said, a little bit of an exercise in a meeting and demonstrating how much you can get done in 10 minutes and how different that looks to the rest of the meeting, which is run in a very traditional way. And then start to gradually get that buy-in. People start to ask you, what is it that you did? Like, how did you run that workshop, that exercise that you ran with us? Can you do it again? And that's when you start to get the trust. So I think, yes, it is possible to be done from within. Sometimes that catalyst from outside can kind of help to facilitate and push forward that process, but both.
Awesome. What credibility indicators do you think are necessary to be earmarked as a good facilitator leader? How can you demonstrate trust and credibility from the get-go?
Make your first workshop brilliant, or I wouldn't say brilliant because that kind of puts a bit of pressure on, but at least make it effective. Because it's very difficult to facilitate or to practice facilitation if you're not running a workshop. So it's kind of like you're kind of learning to do it at the time. But if you take that time to plan and design an effective workshop with the outcome in mind, and then people can see that you got to that outcome and there's an impact afterwards, then that's going to lend credibility. That's the only way really, other than if you're sort of an external facilitator and you've got clients that you've worked with. But the real way to build credibility is to do it and to show it and to demonstrate it. And people feel it as well. If you go back to what we said at the beginning, those feelings from a great workshop, you felt it. So it's possible for other people to feel it. If you can invoke those feelings in other people, then you're halfway there in kind of selling the idea of workshops.
Awesome.
Facilitation.
Hope that answered that one. How do you spark the interest in facilitation skills in leadership?
Oh, yeah.
God, you did have to ask him.
Yeah, the way that I've done this is, again, just through demonstrating it. I've facilitated workshops where I've gone in and done a half-day workshop, and people have come up to me afterwards and said, that workshop, we got more done in those 3 hours than we have done in 3 months. And if you can do that, then that's the start to sparking the interest. It's kind of just by doing it, showing by example.
Nothing but to do it. Awesome. And last one to round out, what is your advice to a young person entering a team overcoming young bias, i.e. This person's often considered insecure and when they ask questions or they're being critical. So what would be your top tips for someone new to it, wants to get ahead? That first impression is really key. I found in previous roles, I was halfway through my tenure there and I wanted to shake things up. I wanted to start running design sprints. I wanted to start doing user testing. And they're already basing their kind of view on you, on what you've already done. So starting strong is quite key. What would you suggest to this person, Alison?
Well, I mean, without knowing more about the situation, what's coming up for me is observation. Is kind of, you know, sitting back and learning and understanding sort of a little bit about the culture, a little bit about people, kind of displaying them. I mean, we mentioned sort of empathy, and maybe sort of thinking, well, I don't know, yeah, sort of using that knowledge once you kind of, you know, made those observations and you got that knowledge. Well, what's the next step? When might be a good time to ask questions? When is a good time for me to get a response on this question that I'm asking, rather than being seen as critical? And in what situation can I be seen as perhaps contributing, rather than people kind of putting the barrier up to thinking that I'm you know, I'm just saying this because I'm young. So I think maybe sort of a little bit of observation there, and kind of learning about the culture might help.
Awesome.
But it's hard to kind of give advice on that without knowing a little bit more about that. If that's you, feel free to email me and we can have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Alison. So Alison's website is here. You can just double click on the link. Alison, thank you so much for helping put this together, but also leading us through how to start thinking about a good workshop culture. And thank you everyone for tuning in and being part of it. So yeah, have a great day off tomorrow, Alison, if you are actually going to have a day off. And yeah, everyone else, have a good rest of the week, and thank you for being part of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ross.
Awesome. See you later.
Bye.